would that plain song have sounded more like a galante composition than the kind of, now when we buy Chant, the CD that was a hit platinum CD, right? We hear like it almost sounds like a very like you said, medieval world.
Yeah, it's exactly that. So when we play plain chant now, you can buy CDs, can't you? Of Gregorian chant. It's always done with this kind of weird, fake medieval tone, isn't it? Like amen. This sort of, you can't sing it normally.
So it's
you would
not
never sing it
authentic to the 18th century.
No, well, it's not authentic to the medieval period either. It comes from the 19th century. It's a romantic reinvention. Yeah. So in the 19th century, the Romantics said, well, we'll get the real Middle Ages back, knights in armor, hooded monks. And they invented this whole idea of plain chant as this weird kind of, so they sing, amen, this medieval sound. Of course, in the 18th century, it was sung with sharps and flats like keys, and it had rhythms. Okay. So it wasn't done in this kind of, this weird metrical style we have now. Okay. It would have been done in triple rhythms, and it just sounded like simple melodies.
Well, that's a huge topic. Wow, that's interesting.
And that's what the Romantics didn't like. The Romantics from Solesmes Abbey, for instance, in the 1830s, that's what they didn't like. The plain chant just sounded like normal, quite dull, normal melodies. They're like, no, it must sound kind of medieval. We've got to see the arches, the Gothic arches, and the candlelight and the hooded monks. So they reinvented the sound of the Middle Ages.
But let's say the period of Palestrina and that sort of era in the 16th century, was there a shift from the modes to the major minor sort of axis?
Yeah, that's a massively complex area. I do discuss it in the book. And yes, I mean, to put it, I'll try and put it really simply.
Right.
So if you go back to kind of medieval times, we only know what we have in the theory books. We don't exactly know what they really did. What they really sang is another matter. But according to the textbooks, they had a very simple system, which had all the white notes on the keyboard, plus B flat. But we know that they sang some sharps and flats to kind of, make the music sound a bit better, to avoid dissonances and things like that. Now, to me, the history of this is the history of the sharp. So the sharp sign, was invented in 1300 by a guy called Marchetto of Padua.
Okay.
And because it wasn't in Guido d'Arezzo's gamut, you may have heard of the gamut, means the total number of notes, the white notes plus B flat, which is musica recta, the correct music of the church, doesn't have any sharps in it. There is no sharp. There's only a B natural, a B me. So when you sing a sharp, it was false music. It doesn't belong. And actually, it depends on whether the maestro was progressive or conservative.
Okay.
Now, the more progressive maestro would say, hey, look, when we've got a sharp, so if I'm singing do, re, ut, re, mi, fa, fa, sol, why wouldn't I sing mi, fa? Do, re, mi, fa, a new me. Yeah?
Yep.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So progressive maestros said, yeah, just sing me when there's a sharp. And the old-fashioned guys, there were a lot of them, would say, no, this is not in the church. You can't do that. It must remain, unsaid. It must be.
Yeah.
And so right up until the 1800s, there are still some maestros in Italy who are refusing to acknowledge sharps in singing.
Wow.
So you can actually see the transition taking place in different maestros, different places. So essentially, if you say a sharp is me, you end up with this. Watch. If I start in C major, do, re, mi, fa. If fa becomes mi, fa, mi, fa. Can you see I've gone from C to G? Up a fifth. If I do then G, do, re, mi, fa, gone to D. Do, re, mi, fa. Can you see?
Yep.
Oops. You can see that the cycle of fifths comes naturally out of this practice. And this took a century or more. It took 2-3 centuries of singing the sharps as mi and the flats as fa. and then you end up with 12 keys in a cycle.
Right.
And so our modern system of keys took about 2 or 3 centuries to evolve. And by the 1800s, it was still not fully in place.